Question 1. This question is about metals and non-metals. Figure 1 shows an outline of part of the periodic table. So the diagram of the periodic table has been given to us and it has been divided into different sections A, B, C, and D. Now, if you recall, on the left side of this, you have metals, and on the right side, you have non-metals. I can also say B is representing transition metals. It says element Q is a dull solid with a melting point of 44 degrees Celsius. So it has low melting point and it is solid. It doesn't say whether it's metal or non-metal. So I can see here because it has lower melting point and it is solid, so it could be a non-metal. It says element Q does not conduct electricity. This further confirms that it has simple molecular structure. It says which section of the periodic table in figure 1 is most likely to contain element Q? The only section that can contain Q is D, because D is non-metal and only non-metals have simple molecular structures. So the answer will be D. Next part says element R forms ions of formula R2 plus and R3 plus. So these are my variable oxidation states. And variable oxidation states are the properties of transition elements only. So I can say in this case, the answer will be B, because B is representing my transition metals. Next part says give two differences between the physical properties of elements in group 1 and those of transition elements. We have to focus on physical properties. For example, melting point, boiling point. We can talk about the density. We can talk about their strength and so on. So these are my physical properties. I can say for group 1 elements, they have low melting point and boiling points, number 1. Number 2, I can say they have low strength. In other words, I can say they are soft. You can also talk about the density. They have low densities. Next part says complete figure 2 to show electronic structure of an aluminium atom. We have to look at atoms. So how many electrons are in an atom of aluminium? You'll have to use periodic table for that. An atom of aluminium has 13 electrons. Then the arrangement is always 2, 8, 8. But in this case, we can't go 2, 8, 8. We'll go 2, 8, and then 3. Now I have to show these electrons. The first shell will have 2. The second shell will have 8. And the third shell will now have the 3 remaining electrons. Next part says aluminium is a metal. So it will have metallic bonding. Describe how metals conduct electricity. Answer in terms of electrons. I can say it's a 3 marker. So the first thing I'll say is aluminium has delocalized electrons. Number 2. Next bit, I'm going to say electrons carry charge. In bracket, you can add negative. And the last bit I need to say is they can move around in metal. They can move around in metal. Therefore, they can carry charge. Next part says name the type of bonding in compound formed between metals and non-metals. So whenever it is metal and non-metal, it will be ionic bond. Last part, it says magnesium oxide is a compound formed from the metal magnesium and non-metal oxygen. describe what happens when a magnesium atom reacts. This is the key word here. So you have to remember reacts means there will be either transfer of electron or sharing of electron. But because it is the ionic bonding, so in this case, we'll say transfer of electrons will take place. You'll get 1 mark for saying this. So you have to say, describe what happens when a magnesium atom reacts with an oxygen atom. You should refer to electrons in your answer. I'm going to say Mg atom loses 2 electrons and becomes Mg2 plus ion. Number 2, I'll say oxygen atom gains 2 electrons and becomes O2 minus. Now you'll get 1 mark for this, 1 mark for saying that magnesium atom loses 2 electrons, 1 mark for saying oxygen atom gains 2 electrons, and 1 mark for identifying the type of ions they will become. How do I know that magnesium will lose 2 electrons and oxygen will gain 2 electrons? Because oxygen is from group 6, and group 6 elements, they always gain electrons. Magnesium is group 2, so it will have to lose 2 electrons so that it can have complete outermost shell.